Hey guys, tonight we begin with something cold, bitterly cold. You're wrapped in a ragged woolen blanket, but it barely helps. Your breath clouds in front of your face like lazy smoke. Your toes are stiff, possibly blue. And somewhere in the dark, a rat rustles behind a pile of hay. You don't want to open your eyes, but you do. It's not morning, not really. Just that gray-blue half-light that seeps in when the sky isn't quite ready. The hearth is dark. The fire died hours ago. And nobody got up to feed it because no one wanted to leave the small, collective warmth of the bed. If you can call it a bed. It's more a pile of lumpy straw shared by 3 humans, a mangy dog, and tonight, a particularly judgmental chicken. You stretch. Something cracks. Possibly your spine. The cold is alive here. Not just the temperature, but the way it seeps into things. Wood, stone, your breath. You're not in a stone castle or even a wattle and daub house. You're in a hut. A filthy, low-ceilinged, mud-bricked box barely keeping you from the elements, and it's not doing a great job. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You cough, dry and weak, and drag yourself upright. Your clothes are stiff. You didn't take them off to sleep. No one does. It's winter, and undressing at night is a luxury reserved for people who don't worry about frostbite or fleas. Your feet hit the floor, packed earth, damp and hard as a frozen root. A familiar pain shoots through your left heel. You mutter something unrepeatable under your breath. Your breath fogs again. You shuffle toward the hearth like a snail who resents waking. Someone else stirs. Likely your cousin. Or was it your cousin's wife's cousin? You've lost track. These huts are not private spaces. You live communally, because walls are expensive and warmth prefers a crowd. You poke at the ashes. Nothing. Maybe a few stubborn embers glow faintly. You lean in close, shielding them from the wind creeping through the cracked thatch above. A small puff. You blow gently. Too hard and you'll snuff it. Too soft and it won't catch. You whisper to it like it owes you something. This is your morning ritual. A sacred practice involving sticks, curses, and the ever-present possibility of smoke inhalation. Finally, it flares. A thin, greedy flame licks the edge of a twig. You add more, slowly, like feeding a baby dragon with a temperament problem. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof where smoke is supposed to find its own way out. Instead, it stays. It mingles. It kisses your lungs and stings your eyes. You blink rapidly. Welcome to another medieval morning. The pig grunts in the corner. It smells better than you do, and that's not a joke. People didn't bathe often, not because they loved being filthy, but because water froze, soap was scarce, and stripping naked in winter was a kind of suicide. You did wash sometimes, though. Historians still argue whether peasants bathed once a month, or only when lice declared martial law. You pull on your boots, or what's left of them. Cracked leather, stuffed with straw, one's missing half a sole. You briefly consider whether this is the day you step on a nail, again. And still, you rise. Because this is what survival looks like. Not drama, not heroism. Just the quiet agony of another morning endured. You trudge toward the door, lift the wooden latch, and step outside. The air hits you like a slap. The sky is pale and uncaring. The fields are white with frost, glittering cruelly. Your breath returns in clouds. Somewhere nearby, a rooster tries to crow. It sounds hoarse, like it resents being alive. You know the feeling, but you keep walking. Because out here, in the freezing dark of a medieval morning, the only way out is through. Tomorrow isn't promised, but this moment, this breath, it's yours. And that somehow is enough. You step carefully through the frozen yard, the mud crunching beneath your boots like stale bread. Everything feels brittle. Air, earth, your joints. Even your breath sounds tired. And yet, there's work to be done. There's always work to be done. First stop, the well. Because as medieval fortune would have it, you're in charge of fetching the day's water. Not because you volunteered, nobody ever volunteers, but because the last person who did it slipped on a patch of ice, twisted their ankle, and is now resting, which means lying in the corner and muttering about spirits. The bucket's handle is frozen to the post. You pry it loose with your sleeve wrapped around your hand, teeth clenched. Your fingertips tingle. Not in a good way. More in a we might fall off later kind of way. You reach the well and drop the bucket down. It hits the water with a soft, satisfying plunk. The rope creaks as you crank it up, each turn sending a bolt of cold through your shoulders. The water is freezing, of course it is, and as you carry it back, it sloshes out and soaks your tunic. Nice. That'll dry sometime around Easter. Inside, the fire is finally going strong. Someone dumped more wood on it. Precious stuff, that wood. You don't burn logs frivolously. Most of what keeps the hearth alive is peat, straw, and anything vaguely flammable that doesn't scream when lit. You've used dried dung more than once. Yes, even human. No, you don't want to talk about it. Breakfast awaits. And by awaits, we mean is being reboiled in the same pot it's lived in for 3 days. It's gruel again. Thin, gray, and possibly containing a bug or two. You sit, take your bowl, and blow on it as if that'll somehow make it taste like not suffering. You eat with a carved wooden spoon passed down from someone who probably died of consumption. The gruel is warm, at least. That's the best thing you can say about it. Well, that, and the fact that no one else has thrown up yet this week. The family talks quietly, mostly about weather, firewood, and whether or not the goat is pregnant again. You offer a grunt of acknowledgement here and there. Words are rationed, like everything else. Outside, the sun finally peeks over the horizon, casting long, pale rays across the village. The light is beautiful in a way that feels unfair. How can something so lovely exist in a place this hard? You pull on your cloak, thick wool, patched 5 times, heavy as guilt, and head toward the fields. There's no rest, even in winter. Especially in winter. That's when the preparation happens. Repairing tools, reinforcing fences, checking traps, foraging for kindling in the woods. You're not idle. Idleness is for the dead, or the nobility, and you're neither. As you walk past the other huts, you nod at neighbors. Nobody smiles. Smiling uses muscles nobody has energy for, but they nod back. That's something. A shared language of frostbite and exhaustion. At the edge of the village, you pass the church. It stands crooked and defiant, like it's trying to convince God it's still standing. You remember hearing that one of the beams came from an older pagan shrine, and that it creaks when the wind shifts west. Historians still argue whether rural churches reuse sacred wood out of practicality or subtle rebellion. You like to think it was both. In the woods, your breath becomes a foggy ghost, trailing behind you. You collect sticks, twigs, anything dry enough to burn. Anything dry. You dig at the base of trees where moss grows thick and damp. The cold worms its way into your sleeves, your collar, your bones. And still, you gather. The silence out here is loud, just the crunch of your steps and the occasional cry of a distant bird. You spot animal tracks, rabbit, fox, something bigger. You hope it's not a wolf. Or worse, a starving noble's hunting dog gone feral. That happened once. Didn't end well. You pause to rest on a fallen log. The bark is cold and crumbles under your hand. You close your eyes for a moment, just a moment. When you open them, there's a snowflake drifting lazily down from the sky. Then another. Then 10. You sigh. Time to move. Back in the village, people are stirring properly now. Smoke curls from a dozen huts. Children run barefoot across the mud, shrieking with laughter. They're either tougher than you or too numb to notice. Probably both. You drop your bundle of sticks by the door and rub your hands together. Inside, someone's boiling the water you hauled. The gruel is being stirred. Again. It smells faintly better this time. Maybe someone found a beetroot. You sit by the hearth and stretch out your fingers to the flames. They sting. That means they're thawing. That's good, right? And as the fire crackles and the snow begins to fall properly and the rooster gives up entirely on being useful, you feel something you didn't expect. You feel alive, not warm, not safe, but here, breathing, enduring. In this small frozen world, that's the closest thing to triumph you'll ever get. The wind is different today, not stronger, just meaner. It doesn't howl or scream. It whispers, sneaks, finds its way through the seams of your cloak and settles under your skin like gossip. You're mending a fence. Again. It's always broken somewhere. This time it's the corner post that leans like an old drunk. Last week it was the middle plank, kicked loose by the neighbor's idiot goat with a personal vendetta against vertical objects. Your fingers are numb before you even start. You try to flex them around the hammer. More of a smoothed stone lashed to a stick, really. A splinter greets you immediately. Perfect. You suck at the blood and move on, one post at a time. Work like this is slow in winter. The wood is hard. Your hands are slow. But there's something comforting in the rhythm. Lift, press, lash, knot. For a moment you forget you're cold. Almost. Then your stomach reminds you. Lunch, if you can call it that, is a crust of bread too hard for rats to chew. You dunk it in warm water from the pot on the hearth. Not broth. Just water. Slightly brown, possibly from the spoon. You chew slowly, not to savor. There's nothing to savor. But because rushing risks a cracked tooth. And dental care in your village consists of whiskey, prayers, and pliers. Someone sneezes. Loudly. You glance over, alarmed. The sneezes have been getting closer lately. First in the next hut, then from the smithy. You tell yourself it's just a cold, a winter chill. Not the fever. Not again. Historians still argue whether outbreaks in medieval villages spread through contaminated water, airborne particles, or, as one popular theory suggested, bad air. Literally, night breezes gone wrong. You don't know the science, but you know the smell and the fear. You toss another log on the fire. That's one fewer for tonight, but right now your hands matter more than your future. Back outside, the snow's getting serious. Big flakes, fat and slow. The kind that pile up without you realizing. You have to get the livestock settled before it sticks. The pigs are cooperative, mostly because they're too lazy to rebel. You refill their trough with scraps from yesterday's meal. They look at you with mild judgment. You nod back. Mutual understanding. The chickens, however, are furious. About everything. All the time. You chase one back into the coop with a stick and the kind of curses that technically don't count because they're directed at poultry. Once the door's latched, you exhale. And then you see it. Hoof prints. Not your goat. Too large. Not a cow either. These are wild. Deer, probably. But there's that sideways slant. Boar. You stiffen. Boars are bad news in summer. In winter, they're worse. Desperate. Sharp-tusked. Unimpressed by fences. You grab the dullest spear from the shed, it's the only spear, and walk the edge of the tree line, pretending you're not afraid. You whistle, not to scare anything off, but to let someone hear you, in case you don't come back. After 10 minutes, nothing. You return with shaking fingers and enough adrenaline to cook your nerves medium rare. The snow's heavier now. You can barely see the path. Inside, you stomp your boots on the threshold. Someone left their gloves too close to the fire. One has a hole. You feel a pang. Not for them, but for the glove. It had so little time. You hang your cloak on the peg and sit near the hearth. Not too close. Smoke from the peat stings your eyes. The little ones are carving dolls from sticks. One holds hers up. Looks like father. It does, only cleaner. The laughter that follows is small, but it's real. It breaks the hush of winter and curls around the beams like steam. Later, the elder tells a story, not from a book, from memory. Books are rare here, and cold fingers don't turn pages well. It's the tale of the winter the river froze so hard people walked across it to steal onions from the next village. You ask if the river will freeze this year. Only if the saints are bored, he says. You believe him. There's a bowl of stew now. Thin, but it has something crunchy in it. Turnip maybe, or a beetle. You don't ask. Warmth is warmth. You swallow it with the reverence of someone who knows there might not be more tomorrow. You help sweep the floor. Dirt to dirt, straw to corner. Someone drops a cup. It cracks in two. No one yells. They just pick up the pieces and set them aside. They'll be used for something else. Nothing dies here. It just gets reassigned. Outside, the snow has erased the world. The fences are ghostly lines. The roofs are low humps under white. You look up. The stars are hidden. No moon. That's good. Less light means fewer wolves, or worse, nobles looking for fun. You wrap a blanket around your shoulders and settle by the hearth again. The fire pops softly like old bones. And in the silence that follows, you hear it. Not wind, not footsteps. Just breathe. Yours steady, cold, but alive. Sleep doesn't come easily tonight. The straw mattress beneath you is cold and uneven, patched together from last season's gleanings and the softer bits of hay the goat didn't eat. It crackles when you shift. You pull the wool blanket tighter around your neck, but there's always that one draft that finds the gap between your collar and your skin, like a petty ghost with boundary issues. The fire's gone down, leaving a faint orange glow in the hearth and the occasional hiss of wood sap surrendering to the ashes. Someone snores. Someone coughs. A child turns in their sleep and mumbles something about bread. You lie still, willing yourself to sleep, but your stomach won't stop whispering. The gruel wasn't enough. It never is. And your brain, bless it, has decided to replay every mistake you've made since Michaelmas. That time you tripped in front of the Reeve, the argument with your cousin over cabbage rotation, that thing you said to Father Hubert about saints needing thicker cloaks. Your body is tired, but your thoughts are doing laps. You stare at the ceiling. It's not really a ceiling, just rafters, beams, and shadows. There's a spider web in the corner that's been there since Pentecost. The spider, presumably, froze sometime around All Saints' Day. You wonder if it dreamt. Historians still debate how much sleep medieval people actually got. Some argue there were 2 sleeps, a first sleep shortly after sunset, followed by a wakeful period around midnight, and then a second sleep until dawn. You're in the wakeful bit, whether you like it or not. Your mind wanders. You think of summer, of the smell of hay and manure, and that one day when the sun was actually warm and someone gave you a plum. It was overripe, sweet, disgusting, perfect. You think of the traveling friar with the crooked teeth who said everyone in your village was going to hell, but also sold very nice charms against toothaches. You bought one. It didn't work, but the string was useful for tying up the shutter. Eventually, your thoughts blur. The cold becomes background noise. Your hands relax. You drift off. And then, you're awake again. It's the middle of the night. You know because the rooster hasn't screamed yet, and the sky is still the kind of black that feels heavy. You sit up slowly. Your back complains. Your knees stage a protest. There's movement outside. Not loud. Just a crunch. Then silence. You hold your breath. Another crunch. You lean toward the window and lift the edge of the shutter. A pair of eyes glint in the darkness, low to the ground. You hope it's a fox. You hope it's not a thief. Though really, what would they steal? Your family's collection of slightly better than average sticks? Then you see it. A wolf. Just one. Watching. Not stalking. Not snarling. Just watching. It's smaller than you imagined. Patchy fur. Ribcage visible. You wonder if it's more afraid than you are. Historians aren't sure how often wolves actually attacked people in medieval Europe. The records are contradictory. Some claim it was rare, others describe entire villages being emptied by hungry packs during hard winters. Truth probably lies somewhere between legend and livestock accounting. You slowly close the shutter. No need to wake anyone. You lie back down and try to forget those eyes. By morning, the world has changed. Again, the snow has stopped, but it's left everything in monochrome. White drifts, gray skies, and blackened tree trunks that look like the bones of sleeping giants. You get dressed quickly. Your tunic is still damp from yesterday. You pretend it isn't. There's frost on the inside of the window. Someone's boots froze to the floor overnight. You all laugh about it while taking turns trying to yank them loose. It's good to laugh. It burns calories, or at least distracts from the lack of them. Outside, the well is crusted with ice. You chip at it with a rock. There's a method to it. Too fast, and the bucket cracks. Too slow, and your fingers do. You manage to fill a pot and bring it inside like a trophy. Breakfast is oat scrapings. Slightly burned, slightly sour. You add a pinch of dried mint and pretend it's intentional. The day's work begins again. You head into the woods to check the traps. Maybe something walked into one. Maybe nothing. That's the game. Along the way, you pass an old tree. Gnarled, bent like it's whispering secrets to the snow. You touch it, not for warmth, for reassurance. It's older than the village, older than the church. It remembers when winters were worse. The traps hold a miracle. One skinny rabbit, more bone than meat, but still, meat. You carry it back carefully, like treasure. You spend the afternoon skinning it near the fire. The little ones are fascinated. One asks if rabbits have dreams. You say yes. You say they dream of gardens and clouds made of parsley. The kids laugh. You salt the meat and hang it above the hearth. It will be stew tonight. With luck, there will be enough to go around. With even more luck, there will be leftovers. The wind shifts again. The smoke from the fire moves sideways, crawling along the floor like a cat. You check the roof. No leaks, just winter being theatrical. You sit on the stool. It wobbles. The elder starts humming a song no one remembers the words to. You hum along. And for a moment, it's not so cold. You wake before the rooster. It's not ambition. It's just cold. Your nose tells you first. Sharp air. Sharper than yesterday. Threading straight into your skull. Then your fingers report back. Stiff, slow, curled in on themselves like autumn leaves. Your toes are worse. They feel abstract, like someone else's toes. Maybe that's for the best. You roll over to face the wall. The frost has bloomed there again, delicate lacework creeping between the wooden slats. It's oddly beautiful, like winter leaving graffiti in your house. Your breath puffs little clouds that vanish before they reach the ceiling. There's no point trying to fall back asleep. You're up. Might as well pretend it was on purpose. Someone's already moving near the hearth. You smell smoke, faint and hopeful. The coals must have survived the night. That's a good sign. You shuffle over and crouch beside them, holding out your hands like you're praying to the world's tiniest sun. The day begins with tea, if you can call it that. Boiled water with some dried leaves someone swears are medicinal. They taste like regret and bark. Still, it's warm, and warm is enough. Your chores today involve hauling. A broken cartwheel means no trips to town, so your back becomes the transport. You loop 2 baskets onto a yoke and rest it across your shoulders. One is filled with firewood, the other with the unspoken wish that you were somewhere else. Outside, the air punches your lungs. The snow crunches underfoot. Each step a protest. The sun is up, technically, but mostly hiding behind a wall of white sky. You shuffle forward. Historians agree that medieval peasants burned everything they could. Wood, dung, peat, straw, even dried animal bones. In hard winters, entire fields were stripped not for crops, but for burnable weeds. You've done worse. As you pass the church, you nod to the statue of Saint Balthazar. His nose is missing, chipped off by time or boredom. The story goes he once survived an avalanche by eating shoe leather and praying to a mouse. No one knows if it's true. You like it anyway. Your destination is the woods again. The snow is deeper here, and every branch you snap feels like a personal insult to some sleeping forest god. You apologize just in case. Not out loud, but in that way your breath stutters when you take something that was never yours. You gather what you can. Deadfall, twigs, a bit of bark that might burn if you beg it. On the way back, the wind kicks up. It starts slow, a whisper around your ankles, but builds with confidence. Soon it's grabbing your cloak and trying to shove snow into your ears. You lower your head and keep walking. There's no heroism in it, just habit. By the time you reach home, your cheeks are red, your fingers numb, and your back screams like a banshee in Latin. You dump the wood beside the hearth. No one says thank you. They don't have to. You're all in the same boat, leaky, frozen, shared. You collapse onto the stool. It doesn't collapse beneath you, which is a win. Someone hands you a cup. Warm again, still bark-flavored. Lunch is stew, the rabbit from yesterday, stretched with lentils, carrots, and a prayer. It's thin but delicious. Even the little bones are licked clean. You eat slowly, trying to make it last. Conversation is minimal. Words use energy. Energy is scarce. One child says something about their dream. It involved bread that talked. You nod sagely. Dreams of food are normal. Dreams of bread with opinions, less so. Historians still argue whether medieval diets were really that bad. Some say peasants were malnourished year-round. Others argue that diets varied greatly by region and season, with summer providing berries, roots, and fish. But winter? Winter was the great equalizer. Everyone starved a little. After lunch, the hut settles into a rhythm. Someone spins wool. Someone else repairs a shoe with more thread than leather. You sharpen a blade, slowly, repetitively. It's both task and meditation. There's a knock on the door. Knocking is rare. You don't knock when you visit family. You shout. You barge. A knock means news or trouble. You answer. It's your neighbor. He looks like a sack of potatoes that learned to walk. He says his roof collapsed. Too much snow. Needs help. You nod. Of course. You gather what tools you have, a blunt axe, a bent shovel, and the kind of determination that's equal parts loyalty and frostbite. The walk to his hut is short. The damage is obvious. You spend the next hour clearing snow and nailing boards. At one point, you slip and land in a snowdrift. Your neighbor laughs so hard he nearly drops a hammer on your head. You laugh too. The cold makes everything absurd. Eventually, the roof is patched. Temporary. Functional. Ugly as sin. Perfect. He gives you a hunk of cheese as thanks. Real cheese. Not imagined, not metaphorical. You accept it like a medal. Back home, the fire has grown. The hut feels almost warm. You hold the cheese up triumphantly. The children cheer like you just conquered Normandy. Dinner is cheese added to more stew. It transforms the flavor. Rich, salty, holy. You go to bed full for the first time in days. As you lie down, you notice something. The spider's web in the corner has caught a bit of ash. It looks like lace, and for a brief silent moment, everything feels okay. You wake to the sound of coughing. Not your own, someone else's. Deep, wet, echoing through the dark like a church bell rung underwater. You lie still for a moment, listening. One breath, two. Then another cough. It rattles, scrapes, the kind of sound that doesn't go away on its own. The kind that says, I've been here before, and I'm not leaving without company. You sit up. It's still night. Or maybe morning. Hard to tell in winter. The sky outside the slats is a smudged navy blue, like someone forgot to finish painting it. You rise, step around the sleeping forms, and add wood to the fire. It hisses, accepts, glows a little brighter, then dims again. Moody thing. The coughing continues. You know the sound too well. You've heard it in others, in yourself. You've seen it end in recovery. You've seen it end. There's no doctor. Not here. Not for peasants. There's a herb woman 3 villages over, but she's half blind and scared of goats. Someone once paid her in onions and she cursed their chickens. The chickens died. So did the onions. You don't know what to believe anymore. You crouch next to the coffer. It's your cousin. You loop 2 baskets onto a yoke and rest it across your shoulders. One is filled with firewood, the other with the unspoken wish that you were somewhere else. Outside, the air punches your lungs. The snow crunches underfoot. Each step a protest. The sun is up, technically, but mostly hiding behind a wall of white sky. Cold, damp, overcrowded homes were breeding grounds for disease. They called it the fever, the wasting, the lung rot. They didn't need Latin to know it was bad. You make a tea of thyme and mugwort. Maybe it helps. Maybe it's just hot. But the warmth soothes. She sips, coughs, sleeps. You stay up. The fire keeps you company. So does your own imagination, which is not always a kind guest. You think about that dream you had once, where the sky cracked open and rained bread. You didn't eat it. You just held out your hands and caught pieces, too stunned to chew. When dawn bleeds in, the light is pale and hesitant. The cousin's breathing has steadied. Not healed, but stable. You exhale. Today is laundry day. You can't delay it any longer. You haul frozen garments to the river. They're stiff as wood planks. If you dropped one, it might shatter. The river is half frozen. A thin skin of ice crusts the top. You break it with a stick. It resists, then yields with a satisfying crack. The water beneath is black and unforgiving. You soak the clothes anyway, scrub them with ashes and lye. Your fingers go numb within minutes. Someone once said that washing clothes in winter was an act of optimism, like saying, "I believe there will be another warm day to wear this." You'd roll your eyes if they weren't frozen in place. You beat the garments against a rock. They make a dull, wet thump, like you're punishing the past. There's a moment when your hand slips and you nearly fall in. Just a splash of water over the boots. But that's enough. You feel it seep in, crawl up your leg like a curse. You walk home quickly, trying not to limp, trying not to think about toes. On the path, you pass a fox. It watches you, doesn't run, just stares. There's a legend here about foxes being the spirits of the dead. Tricksters, guides, or maybe just very curious ghosts. No one agrees. Historians still argue whether such animal legends were believed literally, or just served as cultural metaphors. Either way, that fox looks like it knows your secrets. Back at the hut, the laundry is strung up like medieval bunting. It freezes mid-drip. Lovely. Lunch is onion broth. Heavy on the onion, light on everything else. You chew slowly, trying to appreciate the nuance of boiled bulb. Afterward, the sky darkens. Not because it's late, but because snow is coming. You can smell it. You can feel it in your knees, in the way the chickens have gone quiet, in how the wind suddenly feels organized. You brace the door, tie down the shutters. Stuff rags into the cracks of the walls. The cousin stirs, still coughing, but she manages a weak smile. You lie to her. You say everything will be fine, that the snow won't be too bad, that you've seen worse. She nods. She wants to believe you. The storm arrives without announcement. First a whisper, then a scream. Snow howls through the thatch, snakes through the gaps, settles on everything like judgment. The fire sulks, bullied by the drafts. You all huddle close. Someone tells a story to pass the time. It's about a girl who married a bear that turned out to be a prince. There are onions involved. No one knows why. The wind wails. Outside, the world vanishes. You remember how last year, during a similar storm, a neighbor wandered out to check on his goats and was found 3 days later under a drift, still holding a lantern. The goats were fine. You shiver, and it's not from the cold. Night falls early. You eat dry bread and pretend it's a feast. You say something funny and people laugh. It feels like a victory. The cousin sleeps. Her breathing rasps, but she doesn't cough. The fire burns low. You feed it a handful of straw, then your last bit of bark. Outside, the snow keeps falling. You press your back to the wall and close your eyes. And somehow, despite the cold, despite the fear, despite everything, you dream of bread that talks again. And this time, you take a bite. You wake with a jolt. It's still dark. though something has changed. The air feels heavier. The silence is no longer peaceful. It's loaded, like the world is holding its breath, waiting for someone to move first. You move. Your joints crack. Your breath clouds the air. The fire has all but died. A single ember glows, stubborn but lazy. You coax it with dried moss, whisper promises to it. It sparks, sighs, stretches back to life. Someone else stirs. Then another. No one speaks. Words are too sharp this early. You glance at the door. It's bowed inward slightly. The snow pressed against it must be thick. You try to push it open. It groans, refuses. You try again, this time with your shoulder. It gives way. Barely. You squeeze through the narrow gap and step outside into silence absolute. Snow has blanketed the world with the gentleness of a lullaby and the weight of regret. It's halfway up the door, nearly to your waist in the yard. Every surface is rounded, buried, made soft by the storm, and still it falls. You're meant to fetch water today, but the well is a ghost under a snowdrift, and your feet vanish with every step. You trudge anyway, because what else is there? Historians know that snow was both beauty and threat for medieval peasants. It brought a hushed peace to the village, but it also meant roofs collapsing, animals freezing, roads disappearing, and isolation that could last weeks. You reach the well, find it by memory, not sight. You dig, carefully, fingers numb. The lid is iced shut. You chip at it with a stone. Finally it budges, just enough to draw up the bucket. The water is ice-kissed and bitter. You take a sip anyway. It tastes like survival. Back at the hut, everyone huddles together. You pass the water around. No one thanks you aloud. They don't need to. Breakfast is the last of the oats, scraped from the bottom of the sack. No one mentions it, but you all know what that means. You'll need to barter soon, or pray the snow melts before the turnips do. After breakfast, you check on the animals. The pig is cranky, understandably. The goat gives you a judgmental look, also understandable. You toss them frozen hay. They pretend to be unimpressed, but eat it anyway. You try to shovel out the path to the latrine. The snow laughs at you, so you dig a hole behind the barn instead. It's not elegant, but it's private, kind of. Your cousin is awake now, sitting up, less coughing. Her colors return to something other than parchment. She asks you a question. You don't hear it at first. Then she asks again. Will spring come? You pause. The answer is yes, but also no. Not yet, and not gently. You nod anyway. She needs hope more than accuracy. You think about how medieval people marked the seasons by festivals, stars, animal behavior. You think about how imprecise that all seems, but how maybe they understood nature better than we do. You remember, Candlemas is coming soon, the halfway point between winter and spring. You decide to light a candle tonight, not because it will help, but because it might. In the afternoon, you take inventory. 2 onions, half a turnip, a crumb of cheese, a few stale chestnuts. The bread is hard enough to defend the hut with. You find an old pouch of dried berries, a gift from last summer, forgotten under the bed. You divide them evenly among the family, 4 berries each. They taste like sunlight. Someone suggests making a stew. You laugh. Everyone laughs. It's the kind of joke that hurts a little but feels warm going down. The snow slows by evening. Outside, the world gleams under moonlight. Everything is silver, unreal, like a fairy tale made of frost. You go outside again, just to feel it. The cold wraps around you like a question. Your breath curls skyward. You spot animal tracks. Fox, maybe. Or wolf. Historians still argue whether medieval villages had regular wolf attacks, or whether those were tales inflated by fear and cold nights. Either way, you don't stay out long. Inside, you light the candle. The flame dances. Everyone watches. It casts shadows that look like stories. One resembles a knight. Another, a tree. One looks like a woman dancing. Or falling. It's hard to tell. Your uncle hums an old song. You don't know the words. No one does anymore. You lie down close to the cousin. Her breathing is easy. You're grateful. The candle flickers lower. Outside, the night is soft again. Not safe, but softer. You close your eyes, thinking of the snow-covered world beyond your door. The frozen laundry, the hungry goat, the berries. And somewhere under all that, the earth, waiting, not dead, just asleep, like you. You wake up to a sound you never want to hear in winter, dripping. Somewhere above your head, a rhythm of slow, intermittent drops interrupts the usual quiet. You open your eyes to find the ceiling sweating. Well, not the ceiling exactly, the roof. Snow melt. That brief, precarious thaw when yesterday's snow starts to sulk, leaking its way through thatch, gaps, and forgotten repairs. You reach up, hand shaking from cold, and confirm your fear. Damp straw. And beneath it, damp wool. Damp everything. The roof is bleeding. Your mother is already up, stuffing old rags and handfuls of moss into the breach. This is what passes for repair when the nearest carpenter is 3 villages away and currently snowed in. Your job? Fetch the bucket. The bucket that normally collects water is now collecting ceiling. Welcome to medieval multitasking. Back outside, the world has shifted again. Not white, not silver. Just gray. Slush replaces snow. The sky droops low, as if the clouds can't be bothered to float anymore. Your boots squelch. Walking is harder now than when the snow was fresh. Every step is a gamble. Mud, ice, a disguised route with ankle-breaking ambition. You pass the neighbors. Their roof is steaming gently. You exchange looks. Nothing spoken, just a shared glance that says, "Your roof's dying too, huh?" Historians point out that medieval peasant homes often used a mix of sod, thatch, and wooden beams. Durable in theory, but vulnerable to time, rot, and ambitious squirrels. Winter revealed every flaw. Rain made it worse. You push through the slush to check the animals again. The pig has relocated herself to the driest corner of her pen. She eyes you like you personally summoned the weather. You try to scoop out the worst of the mush. You succeed in covering your sleeves in it. The goat refuses to leave the tiny patch of dry earth beneath her hooves. She's practically levitating from indignation. You'd laugh if you weren't shivering. Back at the hut, you hang wet clothes by the fire. The fire doesn't appreciate the added humidity. It sputters in protest. The damp wool smells like, well, damp wool. A scent you've come to associate with, "We're trying our best." Someone brings in a bundle of rushes for the floor. They're damp too. Everything is damp. Your uncle jokes that your hut might just float away and become a boat. No one laughs, but someone smiles, and that's close enough. Lunch, if we're being generous, is more gruel. Just thinner now, stretched with more water. You chew on it out of habit. Today's historical fact. Winter gruel was often made with boiled grains, but also with scraps of dried vegetables, sometimes even ground up acorns. Peasant creativity, culinary, if not comforting. You stir the pot like it owes you money. The cousin sits up fully today. That's progress. She asks you to describe the outside. You say, "Wet." That earns you a laugh. Then you add, "But the sky looks like it might break open into sun." She nods, eyes closed, like she can see it too. The day passes in quiet labor. You mend a boot with pig gut thread. You rub tallow into cracked leather. You retie the door latch, which had sagged under last night's wind. Your father sharpens tools he hasn't used in weeks. Not because there's a task. They're just easier to sharpen than to think about the dwindling food. Outside you hear birds. Not many, just 1 or 2. But it's enough. Enough to stir something ancient inside you. A sense that maybe, just maybe, spring remembers where you live. And then, because life in a medieval village never lets you have a poetic moment without a practical interruption, someone knocks on your door. A knock. In this weather. From someone outside your family. That can mean only 2 things. News or need. Turns out it's both. Your neighbor's son, barely older than you, is at the door, dripping, breathless. They lost their goat, wandered off during the thaw. They need help. Your family doesn't hesitate, even though you should. You wrap yourself in layers that no longer insulate, lace your boots with frozen fingers, and follow the boy into the gray wilderness of slush and tree shadows. Tracking a goat through semi-melted snow isn't glamorous. It's a lot of squinting at hoof-shaped holes and guessing which direction looks goatish. Eventually, you find her, stuck halfway through a hedge, looking both triumphant and confused. The three of you guide her back, slowly, stupidly, slipping at every step. Historians still argue whether these types of animal rescue events were routine community efforts or rare acts of desperation. But one thing's clear. When winter threatened survival, isolation wasn't an option. You showed up. You got muddy. You shared what you had. Back at the neighbor's hut, you're handed a piece of bread. It's barely a mouthful, but it's warm, and it tastes like gratitude. You return home soaked, exhausted, and slightly goat-scented. Your family has hot water waiting. Just a little. You dip your fingers in it, then your wrists, then your forehead. It's not much, but it's enough. Later that night, you lie awake listening to the roof drip, and somehow, it doesn't bother you. Not tonight. Not after a day like this. You awaken to stillness. No birds, no wind, no drips. Just a heavy, pressing silence that feels less like peace and more like anticipation. That's never good. You pull back the animal skin draped near the door and peek outside. Snow. Not falling. Not melting. Just sitting. A fresh layer, blank and thick, as if the world decided to start over during the night. You step out, your breath curling in the air like lazy smoke. Each crunch beneath your boots is loud. Too loud. It's cold again. Bitter, unforgiving cold. The kind that makes your eyelashes stiffen and your nose sting. The kind that doesn't ask permission. And your first job? Break the ice on the water bucket. You try to punch through it with a stick. Nothing. You try again. And again. Finally, the stick cracks. Not the ice. You switch tactics. Heat. Inside, you nudge a pot onto the embers. It takes time. Everything does. But eventually, the steam rises. You pour the hot water into the bucket. Hear the ice crack reluctantly. Medieval peasants didn't have thermometers, but they understood frostbite the hard way. Your fingers throb. You rub them against your chest, under your arms, wherever there's warmth left to borrow. Breakfast, such as it is stale bread, and yesterday's broth, if you're lucky. Today, you're medium lucky. The broth is mostly warm and the bread mostly not moldy. The hut is quiet. People conserve energy by saying nothing. Every word costs warmth. You try to move. You tidy the straw beds, check the fire, adjust the flue. Motion is your only heat source. But even that has its limits. Today's historical fact? In especially harsh winters, medieval communities sometimes slept in shifts, some tending the fire while others rested, so the flames never died. Warmth was not a luxury. It was an organized effort. You hear coughing again, deeper this time, sharper. A reminder that winter doesn't just freeze, it infects. You look at your cousin. Her color is better, her breathing less ragged. Small mercies. Then your father stands. We're out of salt, he says, like he's announcing someone has died. Which, in winter, might be the same thing. Salt isn't just a seasoning. It's preservation. Without it, the meat starts to turn. And that dried fish you were counting on for spring, it might not make it. So, someone has to go. Guess who? You lace your boots again, double wrap your scarf, and brace yourself. The salt trader lives 2 villages over. A day's walk, maybe more in this weather. Your uncle offers to come with you. Not out of kindness, but because your legs aren't long enough to scare off wolves alone. You walk. And walk. The road is a memory, now buried beneath snow. Trees blur into one another. The sky refuses to change expression. Every so often you pass frozen shapes. A fence post. A broken cart. Once. a dead sheep. You don't stop. The first village is quiet, too quiet. Even the dogs don't bark. Everyone's inside, clinging to what heat remains. Smoke rises from a few chimneys like desperate prayers. You find the salt trader's hut. He's old, suspicious, but not unkind. "Yes, I've got salt," he says, "but not for grain, for eggs." You wince. Eggs? You had one 3 weeks ago, traded for by your aunt after she mended a shirt with only 2 fingers. "I'll send payment in spring," your uncle offers. The trader doesn't blink. "No spring credit, it's winter now." In the end, your uncle gives up his gloves. Real leather, a rare thing. Salt is poured into a pouch. Not much, but enough to last a week, if you're careful. The walk back is colder. Wind has picked up, dragging snow sideways. It slaps your cheeks like it's personal. You keep moving. Historians still argue whether winter trade routes between villages were formalized or spontaneous. Likely both. Some communities carved narrow paths through the woods. Others relied on old footprints and luck. Today, you rely on the latter. You reach home with legs of lead. Inside, the salt is greeted like treasure. It's immediately rubbed into meat, into broth, into bare hands, just for the feel of it. Dinner tastes better tonight, not because of the salt, but because you earned it. Your uncle doesn't complain about his cold hands. Much. Later you hear laughter. Not much. Just a giggle. Your cousin is awake, sitting up, telling a story about a chicken who used to steal mittens. You don't remember this chicken, but the way she tells it, you'd believe it stole a hat too. Laughter, like fire, spreads. You smile. The others join in. Then you hear a thud. The door. Something heavy. Everyone freezes. Then your father opens the door. It's the neighbor. He's holding a lamb, a newborn. "You want to see something good?" he asks. You gather close. The lamb is wrapped in a shawl, its eyes huge and glassy. Born this morning, in this weather. And just like that, the silence is broken. Hope arrives, hooves first. You wake to a strange noise. Not the creak of the roof or the wheeze of your father's lungs. This is something else. Lighter. Higher pitched. Familiar, yet impossible. It's bleeding. That lamb from last night? It's still alive. Not just alive, thriving. It prances awkwardly around the hut, slipping on the packed dirt, its tiny hooves tapping like impatient rain. Your youngest brother has named it something ridiculous, like snow feet or mittens, and insists it sleep beside him now. The lamb has no say in the matter. You sip thin porridge and watch them both, the boy and the beast, as if daring either to vanish. They don't. There's still snow outside, and the wind hasn't tired of your roof just yet. But the fire survived the night, and for once, you feel almost comfortable. That doesn't last. Your aunt comes in with bad news. Again. The southern fence is down. A few goats escaped. They're probably not far. Nothing wants to walk in this weather. But the fence needs fixing, and fast. Animals are more desperate in winter. So are people. You gear up. Thick boots, wool layers, a hat that used to be a sleeve. You take the tools, rope, nails, a hammer that's more rust than metal, and you trudge. The snow is crusty now, icy on top, soft below. Each step is a gamble. You slip. Once. Fall. Once. Curse under your breath. Once. The fence is indeed down. The wooden posts lie like fallen soldiers, splintered and exhausted. A few goats bleat from the distance. They're just standing there, chewing something that might be bark. You set to work. The hammer's handle splits in your hand, and the rope is stiff with frost. You improvise, lashing branches together, packing snow as insulation. The whole thing is a disaster, but it stands, mostly. Just as you finish, you hear a rustle. Behind you. You turn slowly. It's a boy, thin, pale. Not from your village. He says nothing. You glance at your tools, then at your goats, then at him again. "Are you hungry?" you ask. He nods. You hand him a piece of bread, the emergency ration you didn't eat for lunch. He devours it. Historians still argue whether vagrants and beggars in the medieval countryside were treated with suspicion or compassion. Likely, it depended on the day and the weather. Today, you choose compassion. You bring him home. Your father squints. Your mother frowns. Your aunt says nothing, just ladles more soup into the pot and adds a splash of water to make it stretch. The boy says his name is Yannick. He was traveling with his older brother. They were looking for work. They got separated. You nod like that makes sense. It doesn't. But neither does the world right now. That night, you sleep curled beside Snowfeet. Not for warmth, though that helps, but because she snores in this tiny, wheezy way that makes you laugh, even in your dreams. The boy sleeps near the fire. In the morning, he's still there. He helps fetch water, splits kindling. He's quiet, efficient. Not exactly cheerful, but then again, who is? You grow used to him quickly. He knows songs you don't. One is about a baker who falls in love with a witch. Another is about a pig who escapes a wedding feast. They make no sense. That's what makes them good. Later in the day, you and Yannick are sent to gather firewood. You walk into the forest, him ahead, you dragging a sled behind. Snow is falling again, gentler this time. The kind that makes everything beautiful until you remember your boots have holes. You gather branches, deadfall, whatever you can carry. Yannick hums as he works. That's when you spot it. Tracks. Too large for a fox. Too deep for a dog. You freeze. Wolves. You both stare at the prints. They weave through the trees, looping lazily, like the animal knew it had time. You don't speak. You just work faster. Branches piled, ropes tied. You tug the sled home like it's made of gold. Mainstream historical fact. Wolf attacks on humans were extremely rare in medieval Europe, but not unheard of, especially during famines or particularly harsh winters. Still, the fear of wolves ran deeper than their actual threat. It was part myth, part memory. You arrive home, breathless. The others are safe. Snowfeet has learned how to climb onto furniture. Your mother is unimpressed. That evening, the fire burns high. You share what you saw. No one laughs. No one doubts. Your father locks the door with a stick. Not that it would help. And then, the real miracle. Your cousin stands, walks, shaky, slow, but on her own. Applause breaks out, hesitant at first, then real. She curtsies with dramatic flair, then promptly collapses into a stool with a grin. You sleep well that night. Not warm, never warm, but content. Morning starts with smoke. Not the cozy firewood kind. The kind that stings the eyes and makes your throat itch. Someone forgot to open the chimney flap. Again. You cough yourself awake, wave at the haze, and step outside into a world that looks like it's been dusted with powdered sugar and despair. It snowed. A lot. The path to the well is gone. The outhouse is a rumor. The chickens are trapped in their coop, outraged and clucking like jurors at a particularly scandalous trial. You get to work. You shovel with a wooden plank because the real shovel broke 3 winters ago and no one's had time, or coin, to replace it. Snow sticks to your mittens and melts through the holes. Your breath fogs around you, swirling like a ghost, looking for better real estate. But something's different today. The air feels less biting. The wind, less cruel. The sun, still low and pale, actually shows up to work for once. You blink up at it like a house cat seeing daylight for the first time in weeks. It's almost nice. Inside, your cousin is stirring flour and water with a bit more hope than usual. "Flatcakes," she says, as if naming a royal feast. You nod solemnly, as if preparing for coronation. Yannick is fixing a broken stool, quietly, skillfully. He's carved a small flower into the leg, completely unnecessary, mildly rebellious, and weirdly touching. You remember then that it's the feast of St. Agnes. Mainstream historical fact. In many medieval Christian communities, January 21st, St. Agnes's Day, was marked with prayers for purity and protection from sickness. It was less of a feast and more of a frostbitten wish. You've never cared much about saints. But today, you murmur a quick thanks. Not for purity. There's enough of that going around. but for the fact that, despite everything, your house still stands. Your limbs still function, and Snowfeet has stopped pooping indoors. You spend the afternoon fetching things, sticks, twigs, a package of dried herbs your aunt swears will help your father's cough. You walk the same path you've walked 100 times. It feels different now. Lighter. Quieter. A few crows flutter overhead. You wave at them like old friends. One caws back like he disapproves of your hat. Fair. That evening, the hut is unusually loud. Someone's playing a tune on the pan flute, badly. Your brother is telling the story of the time he mistook a turnip for a rat. Again. Laughter rolls across the room like warm bread across a table. Even your mother smiles. And then the knock, a sharp rap at the door. Not a friendly one. You all freeze. It's late. Visitors don't come this time of night, especially not during winter. Your father stands. His joints creak louder than the floorboards. He lifts the wooden latch. It's the reeve. You groan internally. The village reeve, appointed by the Lord, loathed by everyone, has the emotional warmth of wet firewood. He's here to collect. A tax, a tithe, a small contribution for the Lord's grain stores. Fringe historical tidbit. Some manorial lords required winter gift taxes, where villagers had to provide extra supplies, food, wool, firewood, to support the lord's household through lean months. These gifts were often mandatory and deeply resented. You scramble to assemble something passable, a sack of barley, a wedge of cheese, a pair of nearly worn mittens. Yannick offers one of his carved spoons. The reeve nods like he's doing you a favor by not demanding your boots. He leaves without a word. You curse him silently. Historians still argue whether these winter visits were truly necessary or simply predatory. Some say lords needed the extra stock to maintain stability. Others say it was just greed, cloaked in snow. Either way, it's done. The room settles again. Flat cakes are served. Slightly burnt, a little chewy, suspiciously crunchy in one corner, but perfect. You eat slowly, savoring every bite. The fire cracks. Snowfeet tries to steal someone's plate. Your cousin whacks her with a sock. It's oddly peaceful. And just when you think the day is done, Yannick speaks. "My brother," he says, voice low. "He's still out there." No one says anything. He looks at you. "If it stays clear tomorrow, I'll look for him." You nod. Of course you'll go. That night, sleep comes like a kind hand. Not because the world is safe, but because for the first time in a while, it doesn't feel like it's out to get you. You dream of flat cakes and wolves and a sun that actually warms your face. You wake up before the sun, if only because you never really slept. The kind of half-sleep where your body rests, but your brain throws shadow puppets against the walls. Your cousin mumbles something in her sleep, probably about bread again, and rolls over. Snowfeet snorts under the stool, kicking like he's chasing dream mice. Outside the frost is still thick, but the sky is a little clearer. A wash of pale blue is beginning to replace the ink. It's the kind of morning that suggests, not warmth exactly, but possibility. You and Yannick prepare in silence. You layer on everything you own, again, and tuck a hot stone into your cloak, wrapped in rag. Yannick sharpens a stick, not for fighting. Neither of you is particularly fierce, but for poking drifts and testing ice. You carry a pouch with dried meat and a small water skin. You don't talk much, just the occasional nod, like soldiers before a very dumb battle. The village is still asleep. The smoke from chimneys curls upward lazily, indifferent to your quest. You pass the bakery. It smells of nothing yet, too early. The fields are glazed with ice. The trees look like they've been dipped in glass. You take the east path, the one that leads past the woods and toward the outer farms, where Yannick's brother, Marek, was last seen. Marek was always different, restless, too clever by half, always questioning things. He once tried to boil snow in an eggshell to prove a point. You remember laughing so hard it hurt. He'd gone out to trade a rabbit skin. He didn't come back. Mainstream historical fact. In medieval winters, it wasn't uncommon for people to disappear while traveling even short distances. Whiteouts, hidden wells, wolves, or simply getting turned around. A short trip could become a permanent mystery. Yannick doesn't say much as you walk. He stares ahead, jaw tight. You know better than to fill the silence. The snow deepens. You follow tracks when you can. You spot a frozen boot print now and then, half filled with powder. There's a broken twig, a scrap of cloth, something that might be a thread from Marek's old blue tunic. You stop at a tree line. Yannick gestures. He's sure Marek cut through here. It's quiet. Too quiet. No birdsong, no wind, just the crunch of your boots and your breath fogging out like a nervous ghost. You both pause near an old hunting shack, long abandoned. The door is slightly ajar. You exchange a look. Yannick enters first. You wait. He says nothing. You follow. Inside, it's dark but dry. A few dead leaves line the floor, and there, against the wall, is Marek, sleeping. No, not sleeping. Resting. Alive. Barely. His lips are cracked, his hands red and stiff, but his eyes flutter open when Yannick kneels beside him. He whispers one word. Lost. Fringe historical tidbit. In parts of medieval Eastern Europe, it was believed that if you called someone's name too loudly during a snowstorm, the wind would carry it away, and so would their soul. People whispered, even when searching for loved ones. You don't speak. You just hand him the water skin, the meat. His hands shake as he chews. Yannick says nothing, but his shoulders drop, just a little. Relief is loud in silence. You wait while Marek gathers strength. It's slow, but eventually, with help, he stands. The return trip is even slower. The sun rises reluctantly, painting the snow gold in places, gray in others. The clouds are moving in again, thick and sour. Another storm, maybe. You make it back by dusk. The village is shocked, grateful. A miracle, someone says. Historians still argue whether communities truly believed in such miracles or simply clung to hope because it was cheaper than despair. Either way, it feels like one tonight. Marek is tucked into your bed, wrapped in every blanket the hut owns. Your cousin makes soup with extra herbs and exactly 2 carrots. Luxury. Snowfeet curls up next to him like a guard pig. That night, the hut hums with something warmer than fire. Hope. You sit by the hearth. Your mother dabs your wind-burned cheeks with a cloth dipped in warm milk. Yannick is carving again. This time, a little bird. You guess it's a wren or a potato. Either way, it's art. You stare at the ceiling. You survived another day. No one says it out loud, but you feel it. Spring will come. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. You've made it this far. Maybe you'll make it further. You sleep like someone who's just carried a half-frozen teenager across a snow-covered forest. Badly, but deeply. When you wake, your back has declared independence from the rest of your body. Every joint makes a slow protest as you stretch. You sit up to check on Marek. He's still breathing. That's enough for now. It's market day, which sounds festive, unless you're the one hauling goods, haggling with the butcher who pretends not to hear you, and dodging whatever the pigs left behind. But you have to go. Because surviving winter isn't just about heat, it's about barter, trade, alliances. Keeping your name in the memory of others so if you ever disappear, someone might care enough to come looking. You bundle up. Again. Layers over layers until you feel like a stuffed turnip. Your mother hands you a basket of things to trade. A threadbare scarf, 2 cracked bowls, dried mushrooms, and a tin of rendered pig fat wrapped like it's treasure. Which, to be fair, it is. Outside, the village is shaking off sleep. Smoke curls, snow creaks. Someone curses at a goose. You trudge toward the town square. Mainstream historical fact. In many medieval villages, markets operated weekly. Sometimes under charter, sometimes unofficially, and were as much about survival as commerce. For peasants, it wasn't about silver. It was about swapping your extra turnips for someone else's stale bread. You arrive to the familiar chaos. A cart's wheel is stuck in the slush. Someone's trying to sell medicinal ale that smells like regret. Children run past, giggling in layers of patched rags. The baker's stand smells like heaven. You cannot afford heaven. Your first trade is a win. The cracked bowls for a half loaf of yesterday's bread, then mushrooms for a chunk of smoked fish. The scarf? A tough sell. Eventually, an older woman with more cats than teeth takes it in exchange for a pinch of salt. Progress. Fringe historical tidbit. Some medieval villagers used folk credit, an informal system where trades were remembered and repaid in favors rather than currency. You took my carrots last week, now I get your onions. Complex, fragile, and very, very human. You stop by the herbalist. Her stand is simple. Dried roots, some withered leaves, a flask labeled, very strong. Don't ask. You don't ask. Instead, you swap a tiny lump of honeycomb your cousin found in the eaves for a bundle of chamomile and willow bark. Your mother's back has been acting up. And you, well, you're starting to worry about those strange dreams. Not the goose ones, the other ones. Historians still argue whether medieval dreams were interpreted as divine messages, omens, or just indigestion. But villagers took them seriously, especially in winter when sleep and death feel too closely related. You hear shouting. At first you think it's a fight, but no, it's the minstrel, the one with one eye and two teeth. He's back from the next village over and he's full of news. Most of it wrong, probably, but everyone gathers. You listen from the edge as he spins tales of wolves big as horses, of a nobleman who froze with his hand stuck in a soup pot, and of a woman who warmed her feet in a dead rooster and lived to tell it. True story, he claims, brandishing his flask. You smile. A little. The stories aren't meant to be accurate. They're meant to be warm. You trade the last of your fat for a stub of beeswax candle. It'll last an hour, maybe. Just enough to light the evening meal. You also get a rumor, overheard by a passing tanner, that the river might thaw early this year. You don't believe it, but it's nice to imagine. You head home before the sun dips too far. On the way, you pass an old woman humming to a chicken, a boy sledding down a hill on a shovel, and a scarecrow someone has dressed in a nobleman's coat. Probably stolen. Definitely hilarious. You arrive back at the hut with your spoils. Bread, fish, salt, herbs, stories. Your mother lights the candle. Your cousin sniffs the fish suspiciously. Marek is still sleeping, but his color is better. You sit by the fire, unlace your boots, and rub your aching feet. For one night, you have food, warmth, and mild entertainment. You've survived the cold, the market, the madness. The candle flickers. You listen to the wind outside and wonder what it's carrying tonight. Ice, smoke, someone else's whispered prayer, or maybe, just maybe, a hint of spring. It's midnight when you wake again. This time not from a nightmare or the cold, but from the distinct feeling that something is off. You sit up slowly, blinking into the dark. The fire's a faint glow now, down to its last defiant coals. The shadows stretch long and unfamiliar, and there's silence. Too much silence. No snoring from Marek, no shifting from your cousin. Not even the usual creak of the roof timbers groaning under the snow. Just you, awake, listening. You grab a cloak and step outside. The cold wraps around you like a question. The moon glows, low and wide like a broken coin. Snow crunches beneath your bare toes in a way that makes your spine twitch. Then you see it. Tracks. Not human. Not clearly animal either. Big. Uncertain. Deep in the snow, leading from the edge of the trees toward the village. And then, away again. You're not sure why, but you follow them. You should be terrified. But you're not. Not exactly. Just tired in a different kind of way. Tired of staying inside. Tired of huddling. Tired of never knowing what's out there. So you follow the tracks. Historical fact. Medieval villagers had a deep relationship with the natural world. They depended on it, feared it, and often mythologized it. Animal tracks in snow weren't just a curiosity. They could be omens, warnings, or signs from the spirit world. The tracks curve behind the chapel ruins. You hesitate. Then you hear it. A low thrum. Not a growl. Not quite music either. Something like a distant drum being played by a patient ghost. You step forward. Behind the chapel you find her, the village madwoman, the one they say speaks to ravens. She's sitting cross-legged in the snow, arms bare, whispering to a bowl of fire. Not real fire, just a shimmer, like heat haze but in moonlight. You want to run, but instead you sit. She doesn't acknowledge you, just slides the bowl toward you with a long finger. Inside, water, and floating in it, a sprig of wintergreen. Your breath fogs as you look down. The water trembles once, twice, and then settles. You feel calmer, not because it makes sense, because it doesn't. She finally speaks. Cold's not just weather, she says, as if continuing a conversation you didn't hear the start of. It's memory, fringe historical tidbit. In some medieval folk traditions, winter was not only a season but a sentient force, capable of holding grudges, repeating patterns, or remembering those who feared it most. There are records of villagers performing quiet rituals to apologize to winter or invite its mercy. She tells you a story about a girl who walked into the woods during a frost and found the soul of her brother curled in the hollow of a tree, wrapped in rabbit pelts. She warmed it with a song and carried it home in her cupped hands. You ask what happened. She shrugs. Depends who tells it. The wind changes. You feel it in your teeth. You look down again. The bowl is gone. So is she. You blink, and you're back near the hut. No footprints. Your own tracks have vanished behind you. The snow is smooth. The chapel ruins look as if no one has touched them in a decade. Historians still argue whether medieval accounts of phantom women in forests were hallucinations, folklore, or misremembered encounters with healers, widows, or weather-worn hermits. You step back inside the hut. Everything is still. The fire crackles again, stronger than before. Merrick is snoring lightly, clutching a lump of straw like its treasure. Your cousin has pulled the blanket over her head. You return to your bed, curl up under the hides, and let the cold press against your cheeks. But this time you're not afraid of it. Because maybe cold really does remember, and maybe, just maybe, it remembers that you looked it in the eye and didn't flinch. You fall asleep. No dreams, no frost, only breath, rising, falling, steady as snow. Morning arrives not as a burst of light, but as a slow lifting of weight. You're half awake before you realize you're no longer cold. The chill is still there. Sure, permanent as the smell of smoke in your clothes, but it's no longer biting, no longer pressing on your ribs like regret. Someone stirred the fire. Maybe Merrick, maybe the wind, maybe no one. Your cousin is already up, crouched beside the hearth, poking something that might one day resemble breakfast. She glances back at you, eyes puffy, lips chapped, and nods. No words. You sit up slowly like someone surfacing from beneath ice. You survive the night. That here is no small thing. Outdoors. The village hums. Not bustling, just breathing. Men break ice at the well. Women blow into their fingers and mutter about the firewood. Children hop from one foot to the other, giggling with snotty noses. And the chickens are awake, angry, as always. Historical fact. In some regions of medieval Europe, winter mornings began with communal tasks like breaking ice at shared wells, mending animal pens, or checking food stores for rot. These weren't just chores. They were survival rituals, repeated daily. You join the rhythm, chop a few sticks, patch the roof with a bit of thawed hay, even fetch the chamber pot and dump it with minimal gagging. You're part of the system now. There's comfort in the repetition. You no longer feel like a guest in this misery. You're just another local, trudging through the frozen fog. At midday, there's a moment, a real one. Sunlight slices through the cloud cover and everything stops. Conversations stall. Chickens go silent. Even the pigs look up. You close your eyes and feel the light. Warm, real. You'd forgotten what it felt like to not be bracing for something. Fringe tidbit. There are medieval diaries describing brief sun festivals during winter. Impromptu moments where villagers would stop whatever they were doing and just stand in the sun together, arms outstretched, faces lifted. No prayers, no chants, just silence and sun. A young girl giggles and holds out her arms like wings. An old man mimics her. Even Merrick cracks a grin. And then it's back to work. But lighter now. You carry water without swearing. You nod at the goat instead of muttering threats. You share a bite of stale bread with your cousin, and even manage a joke about the taste being slightly worse than your boots. She laughs. Sort of. Historians still debate whether medieval villagers truly felt happy during winter, or if they simply existed in a state of resilience so deep it felt like peace. Some argue that joy was rare, others say that any moment of non-suffering was a gift. Evening returns with less menace than before. You've earned this fire. You've earned this roof. The wind howls outside, but it feels more like a song now than a warning. You crawl beneath the hides, not out of fear, but ritual, like a bear returning to its cave, like someone who knows that sleep is not surrender, but restoration. You glance at Marek, still alive. Your cousin? Also alive. You? Still cold, still tired, still here. But something inside you has shifted. You're no longer surviving winter. You're speaking its language. It doesn't love you, but it knows your name now. And that's enough. The fire burns low, casting long shadows that dance across the rough walls of your hut. Outside, the wind softens into a hush. The village is still. The kind of stillness that only comes after a long day of living and a longer night of surviving. You lie back and let your body melt into the bedding. Every ache and bruise accounted for. Every breath a small act of defiance against the cold. Your thoughts drift, slow and weightless. You remember the crunch of snow underfoot, the hiss of steam as it touched the fire, the strange calm of a world blanketed in silence. You remember the bowl of water, the whisper of the madwoman, the moonlight on your hands. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it wasn't. Does it matter? You're safe now. Warm, just enough. The roof holds. The fire flickers. Your eyes grow heavy. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster stirs too early. A log shifts in the hearth. But none of it matters. Because here, in this tiny crooked hut in the middle of a frozen world, you've made it through the coldest night. And now, with sleep curling at the edges of your thoughts, you let go. The darkness is no longer something to fear. It's just the other side of warmth. So rest now. You've done enough. Breathe in, breathe out. The night is long, but you are no longer alone in it. Sleep well.